10,000 years have passed since the galaxy burned in the fires of the Horus Heresy. 10 millennia since the greatest of the Emperor's Primarch fell in the grasp of eternal damnation and tore the galaxy asunder. Horus Lupercal's corpse may be ashes, but his memories are the stuff of a cursed legend. However, the wounds he made yet gap in the hide of an embattled Imperium, for the battle against Chaos knows no end. Many of the Primarch's sons lived to see the end of the battle and will never forget their defeat. They retreated to the Eye of Terror after the War Master was killed and began a new battle. Abaddon the Despoiler, his greatest heir, claimed the title of War Master for himself and started on a long and brutal struggle to triumph where his fallen master had failed. He started 12 Black Crusades, 12 world-shattering campaigns that will forever shift the power balance. As the millennium concludes, the War Master unleashes his 13th Dark Crusade and final strike, unleashing a vast armada of traitors and heretics. The Imperium holds its breath as the wave of heretics and treaties bursts the Cadian Gate. They will not be saved by a simple act of faith. Only courage will do. For in the grim darkness of the 40th millennium, there is only war.
The origin for this army is rather mundane. To give you some perspective, I was massively into 40k lore, and my favorite faction had always been the Space Marines. So when I started my hobby journey with No Fear, I didn't know what to do with the other half of the army. The other half of the box, which was Death Guard. First of all, the standard paint job for the Death Guard is boring. Second of all, the Heresy paint job that I was looking at doing uses white, and that would completely and utterly suck for a beginner army. And third of all, I genuinely just don't like Death Guard lore. So I decided to look into my personal favorite Chaos Legion besides the Alpha Legion, which is the Black Legion. And I'm already hearing you all now crying about how the Alpha, you basic bitch. How can you like the Black Legion? How do you like Ezekiel Abaddon? He's boring as shit. Well, you know what, y'all? You have to go read the Aaron Dembski Bowden books about the Black Legion. It will give you a whole different perspective about the Black Legion. The best way I can explain it is like a juxtaposition within the Legion of the only Chaos Legion that actually has a brotherhood built into it, and a giant Mexican standoff with every single person trying to kill each other. It's really cool. Not only on top of that, you get a lot of interesting interactions because you get certain legions that would almost never interacting within the Black Legion, such as the Emperor's Children and the World Eaters. These books are also where I discovered how I could implement this into my army with the Bringers of Decay. This faction is sort of the faction within the Black Legion that has dedicated itself to Nurgle. Most of the Plague Marines within the Black Legion are part of the Bringers of Decay. This also helped because the paint job would be a black instead of having to paint a white. This also helped when I stumbled upon a video from Midwinter Minis. I was googling lore about the Bringers of Decay when I saw his video of how to speed paint them. This really helped being a new painter and not really know how painting worked to guarantee having an amazing result. Well, as the years have gone on and my skills have gotten better, I've decided to switch things here, switch things there, do my own personal thing here. The first HQ I painted for this army was the Lord of Contagion. He's one of the cornerstones of this army, always being thrown in and used like a smash captain. The first troops I painted for this army was a set of 5 Plague Marines, and I'm honestly happy how they turned out for being the first units in the whole army to ever be painted. However, it really shows that I had a limited amount of paint with these guys. And this would also be why I ended up painting all my Poxwalkers to be looking like they're from the Imperial Army, just to sort of save on paints I was using and not waste them on guys that aren't really important, that are just chaff for the army. Finally, we get to the floated bloat drone, and this is a super interesting mini. It's badass. It looks awesome, but every single time you handle it, I swear you poke yourself. Additionally, I tried a few new painting techniques with it. This was the first time I used washes on a miniature. This built up the core of my army and mainstays I still use to this day, and it was really just a good place to start out. Naturally, as I began to paint more and more and added a few new armies to my collection, my family started to become aware of my new crack addiction for plastic crack. And like the good family they are, they decided to help me with my crack addiction. In the new start collecting Chaos Space Marines for Christmas. This also helped bulk out a lot of units that I would need and would help lean a bit away from the Death Guard aesthetic that was being built up from the previous box set. I also ended up completely revamping my painting scheme for this segment of the army. Starting off with the HQs again, we get the Master of Possession, which is probably one of the coolest models in the Chaos line. Well, I barely ever run it actually as a Master of Possession. I tend to run it as either a Sorcerer or Malignant Plague Caster. You also get to see a few new painting techniques that would help revamp the painting scheme, such as layering within his cape and the ethereal fire I did with washes. Additionally, here I would add 10 more Space Marines, and to make sure I would lean into the sort of Nurgle aesthetic I had been building, but still have it somewhat pulled away, I did a bunch of head swaps with some 3D printed bits I found. This is actually the first example of it in any of my armies and has become sort of a mainstay in a lot of them. This also would encourage me to sort of kit bash a lot more. The next minis I started to work on were the Obliterators, and it's such a fascinating sculpt that is so rare because it's only found in that kit that it was rather fun to paint just because of the uniqueness of the miniatures. They also helped me practice with a bit of the plasma lighting that I sort of am still trying to master. Next, I worked on the Venom Crawler, and I swear, what is it with Chaos vehicles? What is it, GW, with having to make everything so spiky that every single time you touch it, you spike your fingers and you throw it across the room because you're so enraged, and you go sacrifice a bunch of people to coin because you're just enraged because every single 2 seconds I finished off the box with the Greater Possessed, and I don't think I've actually ever run them in a game. I just have other stuff I would rather take in my elite slot. Overall, this would be an important keystone to the army and offered strong and adept miniatures with a bunch of variety in the box to help bulk out and give a few hammer and anvil units, as well as building out my core base of the army. The next addition to the army was provided by my good friend Omega. He bought me my hammer and anvil unit for the whole army, which are my Blight Lord Terminators. Honestly, nowadays, I don't see how I ever ran the army before without Terminators, because both the Death Guard Codex and the Black Legion army loves their Terminators. I swear everybody loves Terminators. This would also be a slightly big turning point for my paint job for the army, as I would change up a lot with this paint job to try to make them look a lot better than what I had been doing. Instead of going for speed like I had done for the rest of the army, these I spent a significant portion of time on and tried to make them highly detailed. My layering with the fire and a few other techniques in addition to trying to bump up the detail for the miniature. The next addition to the army would be sort of unique. See, I wanted to add some cultists for some chaff units to run for the Black Legion because I couldn't use my Poxwalkers. And they didn't have very many at the GW store, they only had the Blackstone Fortress ones. That's where I got the idea of how about if I took some guard forces that had fallen to chaos, much like I did for my Poxwalkers, and made them cultists. And I went out, bought the start collecting for guard, and that's what I did with them. Now, they have taken on the life of their own for their own army, but they do still run oftentimes as my cultists. The next and most recent addition to the army was some more zombies. I was invited to participate in a AOS painting tournament. Now, I play the vastly superior 40k, so I didn't have any AOS miniatures, so I had to go buy some. And I was looking for ones that would be able to be run in my army. And I stumbled on the Deadwalkers, and essentially they are just Poxwalkers, but cheaper. So taking full advantage of that, I decided to get some for the army. So after all this time, I came into a little issue. The army had very different levels of quality in the paint job, and especially shine through in the bases. So I decided to rebase the whole army to make it all look better. I specifically based it off of deserts that come from my own country here in America, specifically the, I'm gonna butcher this, Chilulan Desert. I butchered that so bad. I butchered it. Which has a lot of life in it, but yet is very dry and arid desert. Additionally, I decided to add that they were near a blood river. So a bunch of them have blood river parts. And then I decided to add Nurgle's rat to the blood river and do this sort of blending technique like Nurgle and Khorne were fighting over this river of warp energy. Everything that I have worked on up until this point honestly culminated in the most recent model I made, which is my Chaos Lord. My Chaos Lord is completely scratch built from leftover bits I had around the house, and a few basing bits actually. His helmet is from a basing kit. This honestly had my new paint job with all the changes I made and all the new incorporations. It had a completely new base that I made, and it became the second sort of leader of the army, being more of a servant to Khorne compared to the Smash Captain that I made earlier, which is a servant of Nurgle. Every skill I have practiced in this whole army was used in making that miniature. Overall, while I might have not ever planned on having a Chaos Army, honestly, I probably wouldn't have given it up to get something else. I mean, it's my second army. Arguably could be considered my first, because I got two armies at the same time. And I've developed it over the years, and it's grown with me just like my Space Marine army has. It means a heck of a lot to me, and I'm rather proud of where it is and where it's going to end up in the near future. Of course, thank you to Nurgle Snurgle for doing that epic intro voice. You fell right into my trap. You are now stuck listening to me ramble about the channel and making sure you are informed of what's going on. Anyways, so let's get to it. Sort of channel update thing. We have 2 series that we are currently working on, which is 2 Dipshits Save the Galaxy, or Dawn of War, and then we have 500 point Warhammer tournament that we're going to be hosting. Additionally, we have a few more miscellaneous videos that we're planning on, like usual. A few more funny moment videos, a few interesting idea videos that were just random ideas that we threw against the wall. Those are all coming up. We also have a few video essays that we're planning on working on. Finally, if you want to be more involved with the channel, or you want to see more behind the scenes content, or any content just in general, to go over and look at our Instagram. Currently, we're trying to get to 500 followers. When that happens, the 500 followers will be able to pick what army we get to make that's 500 point and sort of a celebration, so you get to directly be involved in what armies we feature on the channel. Thanks for spending time watching this video. Alpha, signing off.